All right.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Fire Up Michigan. And I'll tell you what, we got 5 Michigan people here, and the name of the episode is Michigan Interviewing Michigan, originating from Southern Florida, which is where I'm at. But when you're a hometown guy, a Michigan born and bred, that's what we have here. So, meanwhile, what a great show we have lined up tonight. And I like to try to do different things out here. And if it weren't for the ability to reach out to a guy by the name of Taylor Phillips, who wouldn't have been able to pull this thing off anyways. I met Taylor on LinkedIn, and I met a lot of good people on LinkedIn and have found a lot of good guests that way. You know, when I told Taylor about the idea, why don't we promote your show and you can promote ours, we were both intrigued by the idea, and that's what we've created here tonight. With that said, I want to introduce everybody here. Smoking Jeremy B., welcome back, my friend.
Thank you. Glad to be back.
George Eichhorn.
Hi there. How are you?
Good to be back. And the new guy on the block, Taylor Phillips. Taylor, welcome to the show.
Yes.
And
thank you. All right. Pleasure to be here.
Ed Smith. We got to acknowledge Ed Smith. Welcome, Ed. Glad to have you on.
Thank you all. Thank you very much, Scott. Pleasure to be joining all of you.
All right. So let me give you an overview of what we're going to do tonight. Okay. We're going to give Taylor and Ed an opportunity to talk about their own podcasts. And what I also want to do is talk about our platform, the South Florida Tribune, and mention all of our shows and the origination of everything. And then we're going to go out there and let Taylor Phillips and Ed Smith talk about the top headlines tonight. So you're going to get a little bit of everything tonight. So we're going to talk about the Michigan Sports Truth, the South Florida Tribune, the shows, the online pub. And then, you know what? It's time to let Taylor and Ed show what they're all about. With that said, okay, I'll turn it over to you, Taylor. Why don't you give everybody an overview of what the Michigan Sports Truth is all about?
All right. So the Michigan Sports Truth podcast, what we do on here is reveal truth, statistics, research, and other news that regards our 4 Detroit professional sports teams and Michigan college teams, especially the Wolverines and the Spartans, whether fans like it or not, plus some inside information that the mainstream media doesn't want you to know. You can like our Facebook page at Michigan Sports Truth, on Twitter and Instagram at Michigan_Truth, and on YouTube at the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. Subscribe to our channel. Get everyone else. Spread the word to everyone else. We reveal the truth, whether fans like it or not. And right now, we even critique media when they're wrong, right or wrong.
Okay,
kind of like the Detroit Sports Rag used to do it.
Yeah, it's all about making sure any and all appropriate parties are held to the same standards and the same accountabilities as everyone else should be.
So let me ask you, Taylor, when you bring on guests, do you have as many as 4 people on there? You say you like to have different types of crews as well?
Well, I have as many as 3 co-hosts along with myself, Ed Smith, Frank Vajner, and Darren Weiss. So,
hi, Will.
W Vogs 18.
That's Will Vogel. He's from one of the people we are presented by, Sideline Sports.
Nice to see you, Will. Thank you.
Yeah, he's out in Charlotte, North Carolina. But all right, continue on, Taylor. So you say you have name some of the people that you have
right now. The Milwaukee Bucks. Yeah, Frank Vajner and Darren Weiss are our other 2 co-hosts. Sometimes we bring in guests such as Kyle Busch of the Healthy Scratch podcast, the Bushy and Bobo Show. Kyle Busch is an amazing Red Wings analyst on our show, and we use him. We use his research and homework on the Red Wings, especially. But also we have like special. We do the groundwork on the Lions and Pistons and Tigers and Wolverines and Spartans football and basketball teams.
Those are the biggies. So
yes. I mean, it's good that you're able to.
Kyle Busch is the genius in hockey.
Oh, is he really? So you have do you have a lot of different guys on your platform that are specialists in a particular sport?
Yeah,
I would say,
yeah, such
yeah.
as
I would say our
Kyle.
guy, Frank.
Yeah, like I just said, Kyle Busch, Frank
And I would
Badger.
say,
Yeah,
yeah, Frank, he knows a thing or two about hockey,
Okay.
knows a thing or two about MSU sports as well. So whenever we get him on, he provides a good take from the perspective of those who necessarily cheer for the green and white. Whereas myself, I tend to bring more things from perspective of a Michigan fan point of view.
Okay. What about the Tigers and the Lions? Do you do much with them at all?
Yeah, especially during the thick of the season, especially we just came out of with the Lions ending their regular season. Unfortunately, they didn't do enough to make the playoffs. But with the topics, the progress that we saw them make throughout the season, after starting 1-6 and then finishing by winning 8 of their last 10, we saw significant improvement. Not just from their head coach Dan Campbell, but also from their coordinators, seeing the development of the players that they've drafted, both from last year with Panay Sewell, Monroe St. Brown, to this year, of course, with Aiden Hutchinson, Kirby Joseph, and Malcolm Rodriguez, among others. We're very proud and very happy with what we've seen with the progress, not just Dan Campbell, but also the GM, Brad Holmes. And we think, not just think, we believe this is the type of momentum that is going to carry this team into new grounds, new territory for next year. So this is so that way they can shed that identity of same old Lions and embrace the new identity of brand new Lions as they try to compete for, at the very least, the division title.
Well,
I want to get shirts made up. It's funny you said about the same old Lions. In my last synopsis, when I talked about them beating Green Bay and Lambeau, I said as they pulled out of Lambeau in the rearview mirror, they could see the SOL casket being lowered into the ground.
It felt that way. It felt that way, especially when you consider.
I want to get shirts made up that say NFL, and it'll say New Effing Lions.
Clever.
Well, I got to tell you, we're getting a little activity in the chat room. This is a beautiful thing, right, Taylor? Right, Ed? So,
yeah, Jennifer
absolutely.
says
We
hello,
like this.
gentlemen.
Yes, sir.
Hello, Jennifer.
Hey, Jen.
Hi, Jen.
Good evening very much to you.
And Will is chiming in again. Scott, with another comment or two.
right, yeah, I'll actually put it up there so that people can just look at it.
Sure.
Go ahead. Even though, well, go ahead and look at it. And for those that are actually listening, even though I'm a Panthers fan, I've always said on this show this Lions team will be going. So you know what? Yeah,
absolutely, and I can agree with that because, like I mentioned before, it seems that they have the formation pieces in place. Whether it be having the belief in their head coach Dan Campbell, which frankly, you can take away, the clickbaits of the whole kneecaps press conference. When you look at each and every player up and down this roster, you can tell they fully believe and firmly believe in what this head coach stands for and are willing to go through a wall with him. When you get that aspect done, you've already done half your job as a head coach, as far as I'm concerned.
Wait till they hear what my podcast is called.
Well, let me go ahead and mention a couple of other things here before we move on to the South Florida Tribune part, and then we're going to put Taylor and we're going to put Ed to work a little bit. So stay tuned, folks. I have a feeling we're at the making of a dandy. Just so you know, Fire Up Michigan can be heard on iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify, Google, or wherever you get your podcasts. And I'll only mention N4, but there's a lot more. Please hit the red subscribe button on YouTube. South Florida Tribune. We're striving to get 1,000 subscribers and then some. So with that said, before I get to the South Florida Tribune part, I want to get everybody's reaction to the passing of Chris Ford. I know that it was unfortunate. George and I had an opportunity to see Chris Ford play. I'm going to lead off with you, and then I'm going to go around in backwards order. Go ahead, George. Give us a reaction of Chris Ford's passing.
Well, a lot of people don't know this, but I was the founder of the Detroit Pistons fan club. So back in the days of Cobo Arena under Coach Ray Scott, and I relate back to the Pistons when I was a teenager. I was only 16 years old when I founded that Pistons fan club with my friends Larry Griffin and Henry Jones, and we were at Cobo Arena every night. We had to go to every home game to sign up members to join this fan club. Now, mind you, folks, this is when they drew like 7,000 if they were lucky at Cobo Arena. And then Ray Scott came in, and Coach Ray Scott, God bless him, he's in his 80s now. And Scott, I'll make sure we get him on one of our shows, Fire Up Michigan. We'll get Ray Scott on as a guest. Ray is a tremendous man. He was dealt a terrible hand when they fired him and replaced him with Herbie Brown. But that being aside, Chris Ford was part of that mix. You see, you had Dave Bing and you had Bob Lanier. You had Chris Ford and John Mengelt. And, later on, Kevin Porter came. I mean, you had a lot of good Pistons back then, and they had a very intense rivalry, as you and I remember, Scott, with the Chicago Bulls. And, you know, it was an intense rivalry. They met each other in the playoffs a couple of times. Long before Michael Jordan and Isaiah Thomas, it was Bob Love and Bob Lanier and, you know, Boerwinkle and Chet Walker and Dave Bing and, Chris Ford. And, you know, Chris was just a gutsy ball player. He was a heads-up player. He was a smart player. And, you know, he was a real good Detroit Piston and a real fan favorite at the time, Scott.
Yeah, you know, I want to also point out before I turn it over to Ed that in the last 2 episodes of Basket Bros, we've talked about Dave being on there. And yesterday we had Chris Ford. And, you know, what's so neat about the Basket Bros show is it kind of goes into our situation where George and I covered basketball when it was really good. And I know that we had a fine crew yesterday talk about Chris Ford. And also we did something pretty good about Dave Bing. And I mentioned John Mellencamp. With that said, I'm going to turn it over to Ed Smith, okay? Give us your take on Chris Ford.
Well, in terms of Chris Ford with his impact, what he brought to the game of basketball, it is worth noting that he was the very first person to make what is considered nowadays the three-point basket. It was unknown of at the time of when he did complete this, but after the fact, it was established of what he was. But it was more than that. Whether it be his contributions with the Celtics, both as a player, helping them win a championship in the 80s, or as a coach in the 90s, Chris Ford brought that impact. And, you know, while I never had a chance to know of him or meet him, I could tell through these stories and hearing George from your account as well. He was seen to be a very remarkable person and a great human being to be around with. And my condolences obviously goes to his friends, his family, and everyone else that he had met along the way. And I'm sure this is a tough time for them as well. So condolences and rest in peace to Chris Ford.
Well said, Ed. And I got to tell you, the impact, now he had only a good impact on the Pistons, but what he did with the Boston Celtics, my goodness. Guy went on to be a pretty good coach. And, of course, anytime you get to play for the Celtics, not the worst thing in the world, right, Taylor?
It's also a quick note,
Sure.
Scott, pardon the brief interruption.
Oh, that's okay.
When you mentioned the days of when it was talked about the days before Isaiah and Jordan and all of that, you know, when Chris Ford I believe he was traded from the Pistons to the Celtics. That was in the 78-79 season, I believe. That was a couple years before the Pistons had selected Isaiah Thomas in the NBA draft. So that was still a transition era where the Pistons, they didn't really find the nucleus of the core that had become their identity as the bad boys yet. Obviously, I think Trader Jack McCloskey, the GM, was already there at that time. But until they started getting the ball rolling, getting Isaiah, getting Lambeer, hiring Chuck Daly, that's when the pieces started becoming together. But the preamble to that was in the days of Chuck Ford and Dave Bing, as was previously mentioned.
Well, and not only that, you make a great point, Ed. Yeah, Scotty Robertson did the dirty work for Chuck Daly to finish the job. It's not uncommon for coaches to do the dirty work. Their successor comes in and does well. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Taylor Phillips, okay? And give me your perspective on Chris Ford, Taylor.
Chris Ford, oh, man, I have to apologize. I've never actually heard of him per se.
Okay. Well, good. You're getting an education on Chris Ford. Okay, he's not related to the people that sell cars, by the way. Do you know that?
Right.
Kind of figured that.
True.
Right. But get the obvious joke out the way.
I had no choice. Come on, Ed.
I know. Teed up for you.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So, you want to add anything?
It's 83. Well, I want to bump the subject. It's 83-55. Bucks leading the Milwaukee Bucks leading the Pistons. The third quarter has gotten underway. Pistons get the ball first, but we're not going to look into that. It's a total mess.
All right, so
it's been that way for them since Cade Cunningham went down, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's safe to say that Taylor Phillips really doesn't know Chris Ford. That's okay because he knows a whole lot more that we'll bring to the table shortly. All right, Jeremy, you go ahead and talk about Chris Ford. Then I want to get some information about the South Florida Tribune and our shows that we have going on. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Well, when Chris Ford played for the Pistons, I was a fan of 2 Michigan-based teams. That was the Michigan Wolverines and the Detroit Lions. I hadn't really become a Pistons fan because it was hard to get Pistons games on TV up in Flint. They were only on one network in a certain time of day. And, I was a school kid at the time, so I was put to bed usually when they were playing. That being said, my condolences to his friends, his family, the fans that did know him. And that's awesome that he was one of the guys that had the first 3-point shot. I think that's amazing. So that's a nice stat to have in the Detroit Pistons history.
And a nice little nugget of trivia. People, before nowadays when you have the likes of Steph Curry, before him, Ray Allen, before him, Reggie Miller, and so on and so forth.
Larry Bird.
And Larry, of course, Larry Legend, of course. But before all that, you can't go back to Chris Ford. So that's a nice little DI, did you know trivia that you can hang your hat on as a Pistons fan at the very least.
Very good. Well, I'll tell you what, Ed. You and Tyler, I can tell why you're doing a pretty good job with the Michigan Sports Truth.
Taylor?
Because it seems like you have a very good blend going back and forth. Now, I want to transition
Who's Tyler?
over.
Yeah, Taylor.
I'm sorry, Taylor.
That's Taylor's alter ego.
Well, you know what, though? Taylor, you got to cut me a little slack here because today my eyes were dilated for a while at the eye doctor, and I was told I have 20/70 vision. But the good news is that my retina is still doing pretty well. So, Taylor, please accept my eye apology, but it is what it is. So there you go. All right. With that said, okay, we'll talk about our platform very quickly.
Yep.
Which the South Florida Tribune is a digital publication written. And what I did is I have this idea gained from one of my old places called the Deerfield Beach Observer, where I wrote for, and they actually had a TV side, and that's how I got the idea to combine broadcast to go along with written. And they had a really good business model then, and we've tried to go ahead and carry that on. So there you go. All right, Taylor. Yeah, we're going to turn it over to you with some of your other headlines, but I want to give everybody a list of some of the shows that we have. Okay, the Sports Exchange obviously is our top-rated sports show. We bring on a lot of different guests. We have a Wednesday night show, and George and Icorn and I are going to go out there and have one of our own as well. We have a really unique style show called Inside the Pigskin, which is magazine style. I don't get into all this business about coming up with score updates. I don't even care. I'm being a journalist like I am, okay, I believe that I've always been a fan of 60 Minutes, 2020, and anytime you can incorporate a magazine-style show to come up with different content than the obvious norm out there, that's what makes
reporters.
That too. That's it too. That was one of my favorite shows on ESPN.
Especially and on John Saunders, Dick Schaap.
Oh gosh, yeah. Well, don't forget Dick Schaap, by the way.
Oh yeah, definitely. I made sure to mention him as well.
Yeah, well, Mitch Albin, whether you know it or not.
Mitch. Oh yeah.
Yeah, he used to actually work here in South Florida at the Fort Lauderdale Sun Sentinel, and I got to know Mitch pretty well. But Melfar Jr. is actually one of the co-hosts on the show, the son of Melfar Sr.
Thought I heard that. That name sounded familiar.
Listen, Ed, play your cards right, my friend. You're going to find up on Inside the Pigskin faster you can snap your finger, buddy. So let me go over the other shows as well. 108 Stitches Baseball Talk Hall has to do with a magazine-style format. No Limits will be mainly an interview type of show, a one-on-one where I like to go ahead and talk to people. I actually did a great one yesterday up in Daytona Beach with a guy by the name of Graham Goodwin, who's a auto racing guy, endurance king like you've ever seen. That'll be released later in the week. The South Florida Tribune podcast, where a lot of businesses have an opportunity to go out there and buy airtime to promote their businesses. We do that. Everybody always talks about revenue, how you get it in here. And then, of course, we have the Fire Up shows, where we have a Fire Up show in general. One of my co-hosts on there is Mark Mancini, but I also allow other people from other markets to come on where I may specialize it for a different sport. So it's one of those types of shows.
We've heard of Mark Mancini. We've worked with him in the past before.
Yes, we have.
Oh, have you?
Yes, we have, actually.
Yes.
Yeah, I work with Mark Mancini too, and that guy's due to come on tomorrow night. Yeah, Mark's one of those guys that I have a lot of fun bringing him on. He's probably the most candid individual on the planet. And when he gets on my nerves, he becomes a first-class pinata that takes every bit and loves to keep coming back for more. And Mark, I only say that because out of mutual respect and brotherhood. So, but he already knows that. So it's like, the two of us guys in our 60s. George has worked with him. So yeah, Mark Mancini comes on that show, and I work with him on Sports Talk Saturday with Bruce Kessinger. So listen, I line up with a lot of people. Is what I do. So we have that one, and of course, Fire Up Michigan, Florida, and Wisconsin regional shows. And the Real and the Rare is another human interest type of show that we have on here. And then coming up, we'll have Celebrity and Journalists in February in conjunction with Sideline Sports and JB Ellis. So these are some of the things that we have working on. Again, it takes a while when you produce them and you want to time them and you don't want to oversaturate them as well. You try to pinpoint your times when you want to put these shows on the air. And my goal here is to make sure I provide the best talent I can, whether it's with Sideline, whether it's Mancini, or a lot of my own is homegrown talent too. I'm telling you, and that's the key to building an operation is you have people that you find through social media, whether it's LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and then you continue to build relationships there. And one thing I like to do with the South Florida Tribune is I have a lot of good media distribution partners. Believe it or not, the Michigan Wolverines send us material. And the reason why I added them is because there's a lot of transplanted Michigan Wolverine fans all over the country, and I have ties to them there. So Michigan,
that alumnus knows how to travel and knows how to spread. So that's like one of the most, that's a high caliber, high key fan base to do a demographic based on. Absolutely.
Well, and not only that, here locally in Florida, I have the Miami Hurricanes, Florida Gators, and Florida State Seminoles.
That
I work the South Florida Bulls, FAU.
Oh yeah, trust me, I know about the days about the U. So,
well, I'm working with them again. I used to work with them back with Howard Schnellenberger back in the day as well. So, but yeah, don't worry, Mark. We definitely talk it up, boys. Words of wisdom coming from somebody that isn't shy in his own right. You don't have to worry about it. I've had all day to prepare for this show. Yesterday, my voice got to work out all over the Daytona International Speedway. So, what I'm trying to say is we have a show for everyone, sports and non-related sports. And the only way that you're going to make it in this business, Taylor, and yes, Taylor, it is Taylor, okay, whether you're watching that one-sided affair, okay. But the reality is you can't be a one-trick pony. You just can't do it. And if you are, you're going to miss out on a lot of good advertiser sponsors. And that's the one thing we've worked really hard. All right. We got to give Will Vogel his due. After all, he's paying attention. But don't expect me to read them. Well, maybe I better because we got audio too. George Scott, me and others have helped me a lot along the way become better on shows. You know what? Well,
I can tell.
Well, obviously the guy knows what he's doing, and he's a first-class researcher. That's where I'll go with Mr. Vogel. But with that said, at least he's keeping himself visible throughout the show. But Taylor, Taylor. I guarantee you I will have that name memorized because there's a city called Taylor, Michigan. Okay, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And
there is, yep.
And
I used to date a redhead from Taylor.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Well, I got news
there you
for
go.
you. I have cities named it for me out in Arizona. One is Bullhead City, Arizona, because that's what people think I am anyways. And if that isn't good enough, what about Scottsdale? And
I've dated a couple redheads named Taylor. But that's another story.
I used to have a boss named Taylor, and that's another story for another day.
With a name like George, how can you be against Georgetown University?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And you know what? My biggest
John
name,
Thompson.
And my biggest thing about my namesake, Scott, they have Scott tells I haven't gotten a residual on any of them. It's in the eyes of Gomer Pyle. Shame, shame, shame. Then again, I'd probably have to cut it up with 9 million Scotts.
Unfortunately, as much
are you able to breathe with all this insanity that I'm bringing here while Ed is laughing so hard? Jeremy's
Scott. I wanted to say, Scott, I popped a little bit because you said the name Gomer Pyle. Well, I appreciate it. I understand that's a reference to Hogan's Heroes. I can't help but think of Full Metal Jacket whenever I hear the name Gomer Pyle.
Who?
Private Pyle?
Yeah.
Full Metal Jacket. Gunnery Sergeant Harmon in the Immortal Wars of Gunnery Sergeant Harmon, Arlie Army.
Yeah, don't play with TV trivia with me, okay? Gomer Pyle had nothing to do with Hogan's Heroes.
I know. Trust me.
That was the late Bob Crane show.
Exactly.
Gomer was a spin-off from the Andy Griffith show.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, Jeremy, you do a good Gomer Pyle, golly, man.
Hey, you wouldn't your trivia, but I knew it was around from that era of shows.
Yeah, Andy Griffith.
Andy Griffith show, which became
appeared as a car mechanic on Andy Griffith for many episodes.
Which when he left the show, it became Mayberry RFD.
That's true with Ken Berry.
Yep.
Right. Yeah,
And
but
then-
I watched a lot of those reruns there with Gomer Pyle, Hogan's Heroes, Andy Griffith. Hey, listen, I hate to say this, okay? And I want everybody to correct me if I'm wrong, okay? Because I've been wrong before and I'll be wrong again. But nobody's going to sit here and tell me that when we grew up watching shows a whole lot better what they put up there nowadays, right? TV back then was awfully good.
There's a lot of short attention span theater because the commercials have gotten longer and the shows have gotten shorter. Back when we watched shows, you got 26 minutes of programming in 30 minutes with only like 4 minutes of commercials. Now you get 14 minutes of shows and 16 minutes of commercials in 30 minutes. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Like,
you know,
It's the way it is nowadays.
I've really enjoyed. There's a couple more I've really enjoyed lately, Scott and guys. It's The Odd Couple. What a great show with Jack Klugman and Tony Randall, and Get Smart with Maxwell Smart and Agent 99 Barbara Feldon and Don. What's his name? Get Smart.
Yeah, Don Sutton.
Don Adams.
Don Adams. Okay, I knew it wasn't. I wanted to say Mattingly because I was thinking baseball all of a sudden.
Well, you know what? All right.
Two other good ones.
Now you guys are really, nowadays you guys are
ones.
really putting me in a spot where I have to go back.
Ed's got a couple of them, Scott.
Yeah, you know what, Ed? All right, Ed, here, okay.
And there was Gilligan's Island. And
just the Green Hornet and the Mod Squad for me.
Yeah, but you know what? Ed makes a great reference about my neck of the woods. Of course, he's a Michigan guy. What would I expect out of him anyway? Yeah, Deerfield Beach, hometown of former Wolverine Denard Robinson, I believe.
Yes,
no, you don't believe it is. Okay, and I had a chance to interview Denard Robinson when he was with the Jacksonville Jaguars as well.
Who had his own slot on his team depth chart as offensive weapon.
Fun fact, if the Jacksonville Jaguars had not drafted him, I believe the next team in front of him would have, and it would have been the Detroit Lions. That's from a report I had read years ago, and I believe one of the newspapers that the Lions were on. They had Denard on their board, and Jacksonville snacked him up right before them.
Oh, I believe you.
Yeah, well, once upon a time, the Lions had a shot at Anthony Carter. We know how that worked out. He went with the Michigan Panthers, so go figure.
Yeah,
all right, well,
that's okay. That's okay. We got Hutchinson now, so it all worked out.
Oh, yeah.
Don't forget Desmond Howard had a short stint, too.
That was then. Yes. This is now.
But, Ed, let me tell you this, okay? I'll never forget when I was at the Jacksonville Jaguars last game against the Colts last year, how – I thought they were going to snap up Aiden Hutchinson, but they fell in love with the kid Trayvon Walker out of Georgia. So what you had there, Ed, was technically that SEC connection, Georgia. Of course, by the way, it didn't hurt that they see him 2 or 3 times when the Gators take on Georgia there. So they had the ability at TIAA Bank Stadium to get familiar. Sure. So when Aiden Hutchinson dropped down to number 2, and the Lions probably –
which, by the way, I could say one reason why Hutchinson probably fell down to the Lions was, let's not forget, the GM for the Jags. His name is Trent Baalke. Trent Baalke had a very bad falling out with Jim Harbaugh when they were at the San Francisco 49ers. So you don't put it past Baalke to not let that petty grudge against Harbaugh go to pass on drafting his player Hutchinson
of course,
Trayvon Walker. And also Shadid Khan, the owner, Shad Khan, he wanted Hutchinson.
Yeah, he did. But who turns in the card? The GM. So the GM won and got his man in Trayvon Walker. But I will say the same thing I say every time they make a reach like that. Crapsonville does Crapsonville things.
It felt like a very Jags move. Listen, I like Tony. Listen, I like Tony Khan because I watch AEW and I wanted to succeed. But I will be sending him gift baskets year after year for taking Trayvon Walker over Aiden Hutchinson. That was a gift from the gods.
You know what, Ed? You may bring up a really good point, and I'm glad it's the first time I've heard of it. Thank you very much. Okay, that I didn't know at all that grudge existed. I knew that Jim Harbaugh didn't like Trent Baalke because of the falling out that he had. But I didn't know that might have been attributed to.
Could be. It's not. It wasn't public out there. But if you connect the dots, it's not a bad theory.
I'm complimenting it, Ed. I really am. That hey, listen. When we're on these broadcasts, and I'm giving you a compliment, B, I know that you're sharp enough to accept it. But it never occurred to me. But I got news for you: the Lions couldn't get that draft card up there fast enough. And who was it? Carl Lewis, that used to be a real first-class runner, Ronaldo Nehemiah. I got news. The Lions showed some first-class
Usain Bolt
when they got that card.
I would say Usain Bolt when they got that card in there faster.
I mean, even Brad Holmes admitted it in the interview. He said, "Listen." Brad Holmes admitted that the NFL was a little bit mad at the Lions for turning the pick as fast as they did because they knew as soon as they saw Trayvon Walker, it's like, yep, we got our guy. We know who we want.
Oh, they want all the extra money. Will Vogel has one interesting one that I think you guys should be aware of. Ooh. I want to let Taylor and Ed know that my uncle played hockey at Michigan. Good one, Will.
Did he play under Red Barrington? Did he play for Red Barrington?
Was he's paying attention. He'll probably shoot that out for you in a moment. So, but with
Red Barrington, that's the name.
Yeah, that
Red Barrington was there a long time. He probably did play under Red.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. So all right. So here's what we're gonna do, Taylor. Okay. I know you're blending in with all these TV shows that none of this came scripted, by the way. This is called Natural Broadcast 101.
I like
and
it.
when we find a thing, we are all with it. So with that said, the one thing we're not going to roll with are Taylor. Yeah, Taylor, I am the Motor City Madmouth. If you didn't figure it out, you probably will now. And you probably know why, because I don't shut the heck up. And I do that. I'm anything but boring. Of course, I'll let you guys go out there. Will says he has no idea. His name was Michael Handel or whatever. I don't know anything about that. So. All right. Well, anyways, Will, I'm glad that you brought the connection up with, your uncle being there. So let's go on to some headlines here. This is what Taylor and Ed do well. Okay. We're going to talk about top headlines. All right, Taylor, take it away.
All right. So the Michigan Wolverines football team fired their co-offensive coordinator, Matt Weiss, amid an investigation of a probe on computer access crimes. Now, some may say it might have been based on pornography, but we don't know for sure. But he was put on leave, and then a few days later he got fired. That was after we did our show last week on our Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube live on our own platform, the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. So that being said, it's we just need to find some inside information as best we can.
Well, at the moment, in terms of the details as to what led to how severe it was, about what the specific crime or incident was that took place regarding the computer access, we know it took place in Schembechler Hall. In late December, when the team was getting ready to face TCU in the Fiesta Bowl. We know it revolves around unauthorized access made either by Weiss, by Weiss, or by someone on his behalf in regards to using public computers. I believe in regards to emails as well. So we do know that it involves emails of some kind, some variety. What we know after that, it's still yet to be determined. There's still an active, ongoing police investigation, but that is the crux. That is the up-to-date detail of the information that we know regarding this situation. And like we said, he has been let go from his job. He stated it that he he enjoyed his time in Ann Arbor, and that he's looking to putting this matter behind him and focusing on what he does best. If that's the case, more power to him, and I hope that nothing severe comes of this investigation. But you have to think there's got to be some type of reasoning as to why it went from computer access crime to fired from the offensive coordinator spot at the University of Michigan within just like that. Now, as more details fall in, I think we'll be able to connect the dots better in that regard. But in that case, that being said, we can mention of how, when you think about all potential coaching changes, whether it be on the staff or right at the top with Jim Harbaugh for the second year in a row, as we seem to be constantly seeing nowadays with NFL rumors and Jim Harbaugh. But this, in terms of likely roles within the coaching staff to change for Michigan this upcoming offseason, this felt like one of the more expendable, the more likely to change, because we went through the matter of replacing Josh Gaddis not too long ago with Matt Weiss. Now we have him. He was also not just the quarterbacks coach, but he was also the co-offensive coordinator with Sharoni Moore. I would expect Sharoni Moore to get a bump up, either to be more in charge of where the role of where Weiss is, or he'll be the full-blown OC, and you just have someone to focus on being the quarterbacks coach. Now, that being said, that will be a question as to whether or not will this have an effect on play calling, the passing game in general, the development of J.J. McCarthy, and what what can he do in terms of getting better as a player, and the wide receiver core as well, because we do have a couple players leaving, Ronnie Bell being among them, the senior leader, but they do have some guys coming back as well. So it'll be interesting to see how the offense in general, because we know what Michigan's identity, what their bread and butter is. It's always going to be run the football no matter what. But what they do in the passing game is the difference between taking that next step towards, okay, you beat Ohio State. Yeah, you're the kings of the Big Ten. Now can you take that next step towards winning a game in the college football playoff and contending for and winning the national championship?
Amen.
So that's what we have yet to see in terms of Michigan from that aspect of their offense.
All right. I want to make a shout out to Michael Canseco. I'm doing bad, Michael, with the pronunciation. Michael C. I was on Basketball yesterday. You want to talk about one of the more knowledgeable basketball guys out there? This guy has had, and I just want to let people know out here that are tuning in that Michael's going to be a contributor on the Sports Exchange on Wednesday night. So welcome to the team, Michael. You know what? There's nothing that isn't impressive about Michael C. So Michael, cut me a little slack on the ability to not pronounce your last name. But when I get in trouble, and should know better as a journalist not to do it, Michael C. works for what it is. And he's going to be the latest member of the South Florida Tribune Broadcasting Network YouTube channel and everything that we have. So, George, get used to Michael and Ed and Taylor. Okay, get used to them, and Jeremy. But we're adding more and more people here to this growing platform. And
I'm good with it.
What's that?
I'm great with it.
Yeah. Michael's
By
great.
the way, Michael Handel played from 83 through 86 and then became a student manager for the ice hockey team in 1987. At that time, the head coach was Gordon Berenson.
AKA
Gordon Berenson.
I told you. He also played baseball. He played Big Ten baseball as well, Mr. Handel.
Mm-hmm. I just wanted to.
I got to take one.
I just pulled it up so I could get it up there.
Scott, I got to take one exception.
Thank you,
to what
Jeremy.
Ed said, okay, Ed, you're fluffing this off like it's no big deal. They put the Ziggy to Weiss. Now, listen, Scott and I have covered enough football that we know a young, tender quarterback like J.J. McCarthy cannot be happy that his offensive coordinator and his right-hand coach is gone. So we cannot overlook that fact that Josh Geddes is gone and now Matt Weiss is gone. I don't care if he brings in the Lord and Savior, Jesus, to coach. It's still a change for this young quarterback.
It is. I can admit that.
Don't fluff it off like, oh yeah, he committed some crime. Just let him go.
No. I'm not talking about in terms of what it means to JJ McCarthy. In terms of what Matt Weiss has done, if it's severe enough to where he deserved to lose his job, then he deserves to lose his job. I'm not disputing that whatsoever.
But he was the co-offensive coordinator, so there's two of them.
Yeah, but I can understand. But
this team.
I think what you're trying to say, this could have potential effect on JJ's development. Yes, I can agree with that.
Very well regarded as a coach.
Oh yeah,
and as a
absolutely.
person.
I can only hope that Harbaugh knows what he's doing, because let's not forget Harbaugh does have a connection with JJ as well.
Oh
so
yeah.
As long as Harbaugh is still there is still a chance that JJ can still have his mind tapped into.
What you don't want is a revolving door with your assistant and your associate coaches. You don't want that.
I get it. Trust me. We saw that up close and personal with what the Lions had to go through in the waning years of Matthew Stafford. We were switching offensive coordinator year after year. So I get it. I get that completely. But
thank you.
If it comes down to making sure that the system of everything is still in place, knowing your bread and butter with game plans, strategies, getting specific people involved in the offense, as long as that doesn't change fundamentally, if we see more of this year, what we see next year, especially in terms of JJ's development, in terms of recognizing in certain plays that, hey, not every passing lane is going to be open, so why not just tuck the ball and run? If we see that develop more of JJ, then I can say, hey, you know what?
I agree.
Maybe it was for the better that we saw we had to go in a different direction. That could always be a possibility. That's the coin flip scenario as well.
There's only one thing I want to add to this whole thing, and I know where everybody's coming from. Boy, Taylor, what a hot tamale of a topic you just brought up here. But I will say this: when Harbaugh was flirting with the Vikings last year, everybody thought Okay,
That's part of what we do.
you're in real trouble, right? But you know what? Somehow, some way, Jim Harbaugh has more lives than Morris. Okay, and he managed to get them to another college football player. So
More like 18 or 27 lives. Wowzers.
And not to mention an undefeated regular season, another Big Ten championship, and you beat the brakes off Ohio State in their house. I mean, you can't say, right, which is something the Michigan team can't say they haven't done in 2 decades.
Smoking
beating Ohio
Jeremy
State
had
and Columbus.
Smoking's got a comment. I know.
Well, I want to go back to a week ago when Blake Corum came back to Michigan. What did I say? Blake Corum coming back to Michigan means this was exactly what I thought. He hired an agent to start the rumors so he could get the interviews to get a bag. He wanted to be the highest paid coach in the Big Ten after Mel Tucker got his bag. As soon as Blake Corum came back, before any of that stuff came out, I knew Harbaugh was coming back because Corum was a Harbaugh guy.
Exactly. If Corum was staying, why would Harbaugh leave?
All right.
That's good point. Good point, Ed.
Because there is talk of Corum going to the transfer.
There's also Cornelius Johnson that's staying too.
Yeah, I mean, but there was talk of Corum hitting the transfer portal if he stayed another year, and it didn't happen. He announced he was coming back to Michigan 2 weeks, one day after the NFL agent posted that Twitter tweet saying Harbaugh will take a job in the NFL if offered.
All right, well, let me just say this. Michael C. is making my job a lot easier. Get to know this guy because you're going to see a lot of them. You know, all right, so I don't have to worry about pronouncing it. We'll just call him Con Man, and that's good enough. So there you go.
What's up, Con Man?
There you go, Con Man. Make my life easier, and you're getting a ton of airtime anyway. So if I were you, Con Man, save your breath because you're going to need a lot of it come Wednesday night.
You're basically getting a free promotion, my man.
That's it. Oh, this guy's a classic, this guy. So, all right, with that said, okay, Taylor. Okay, we talked about Matt Weiss, and you open up a real barn burner here. Let's talk about the Red Wings. What do you got there, Mr. Taylor? Well, the Red Wings are heading for a downfall. After winning 2 straight against the Jets and Maple Leafs, they were both big games. They have lost 4 out of their last 5 games, and including a 4-3 loss to the Columbus Blue Jackets where they fell behind 4-0. That was in regulation. They got smashed by the defending Stanley Cup champion Colorado Avalanche. They blew a 3-1 lead in Arizona and lost in a shootout to the Coyotes. And then they beat the Vegas Golden Knights 3-2. But that game against the Philadelphia Flyers at home last Saturday was a defensive slugfest. But the Flyers came out on top 2-0, and they held on 2-1. Lucas Raymond scoring the only goal. But the Red Wings right now, as they prepare for the San Jose Sharks at home tomorrow night at Little Caesars Arena, the Red Wings, oh man, they're still 8 points out, but they've fallen behind. They've fallen a few spots back behind the Flyers, still 1 point back. It used to be 3 after the loss to Philadelphia. Buffalo, the Sabres, the New York Islanders, the Florida Panthers, and then the Pittsburgh Penguins will hold that second wild card spot with 54 points. The Red Wings 19-18-8 with 46. Pittsburgh 23-15-8 with the aforementioned 56 points. The Washington Capitals 25-18-6 with 56 points right now, holding that first NHL Eastern Conference wild card spot. But the Red Wings, if they want to continue making a playoff chase, then they better pick it up. They better get their act together. They got to stop making excuses about weird bounces and other stuff. They got to control the puck better. They got to play better defense. Better defense,
got to better in the power
help the
play.
Goaltender out too.
Oh, their power play stinks.
And penalty killing.
Here's the thing. They bring in a new assistant coach. You talk about coaches, Ed. They bring in a new assistant coach to do the power play this year for the Red Wings, and it's still one of the worst.
Still bad. Right.
You know,
I don't know if that's on coaching or that's on the players, but it's still bad.
I don't know if you guys have talked about this on your show, Taylor. The one thing that bothers me is the way they are letting their captain, Dylan Larkin, out to dry. They will not give that man a contract extension right now. They will not negotiate with him. I have a feeling Stevie is going to get rid of Larkin, but don't tell me that doesn't affect some of these players because he is very well liked in the locker room, Dillard Larkin. And I'm not trying to pinpoint everything on that.
I believe that, George, about Dylan Larkin's likability and what he brings to the locker room, to the team. But I will say that Yzerman, I don't think Yzerman is going to be on that is that type of mind to think of like, oh, I don't know, he has uncertainty about Dylan Larkin. No. There's no question of what Dylan Larkin is, what he brings to the team, and where he wants to be. I think I just read an article today from M Live that says that both parties in agreement in terms of the number of years for the new contract, which is 8 years.
The money.
They both, it's the money that they're separated on. Larkin's camp, they want $9 million.
Give him 8 years. That's crazy.
Larkin's, I understand, but here's the thing: Larkin's camp, they want $9 million a year or more. Yzerman is suggesting $8 million. I think if you can find a way to find a middle ground, a fair common ground, let's say 8.5, 8.7, 8.8, with a couple incentives tagged on, that could be, in my opinion, a halfway happy deal to get something done where both sides can be satisfied. Now, in Dylan Larkin's case, listen, for Dylan Larkin to be for his camp to be saying, "Oh, we want $9 million, amongst the average salary per year," I would be more sympathetic to that if Larkin was scoring more goals. I know that's not his play style. That's not who he is. He's more of a playmaker. I understand that. Right. But if you're going to be asking for that type of money, you got to be putting up those kind of stats. You got to be putting up 35, 40 goals per season averages.
Yeah.
And he has not been doing that.
I agree.
And there's an upcoming free agent this upcoming summer, Bo Hoferoff, I believe. He is one of the more consistent top line scoring centers in the entire league. And he's going to be getting a number of suitors from a number of teams who will be requiring his services. That's the
let me add a few things here to this whole thing. Number one, the Delkovich, that trade didn't work out, the goaltender. Number two, Jacob Verano, how did that work out? Didn't work out very well either. So you got a couple trades that just unfortunately didn't.
He's in Grand Rapids. Verano's in Grand Rapids.
And don't forget Tyler Bertuzzi, injury prone.
Right. So you've had a lot.
You know what, George?
Yeah, 3 injuries.
Don't be surprised. Yeah, injuries, by the way, mind you, has been an unfortunate negative point that has stalled this team's development, which I would say is one valid reason, but still, it can't be the only reason. You got to find ways to work around that, and I agree with that. Right. It's funny that you mentioned Tyler Bertuzzi because when you've seen the moves that Yzerman has done so far, I wouldn't be too surprised to see or hear of Tyler Bertuzzi potentially being on any trading blocks this for this year or next year, whatever. Because number one, you're going to need all the money that you can possibly need to pay Larkin. And while I like Bertuzzi whenever he's on the team and what he brings, and especially when he's playing alongside Raymond, alongside Larkin and others, it's his availability that's suspect. And I'm not even talking about the whole thing last year with the vaccine. I'm talking about straight up injury. Like when he's up there and he just hasn't been able to stay healthy. That's going to hurt you. That's going to hurt your value long term.
Jeremy.
I've been waiting patiently to say, you got to remember how bare the cupboard was that Jeff Blashill left this place. And for us to be that close to the playoffs right now is a testament to the coaching ability of the head coach, not so much the talent on the team. Right. That as they progress and learn more, they'll get better. But it can't happen in 1 year. It's kind of like, hockey has a lot more cogs to it than a football team, in my opinion.
Let's not forget, when Yzerman left the Wings in 2010 to head Tampa, they didn't turn into some stalwart juggernaut overnight either. It took them a good 3, 4, 5 years before they became that next tier became contenders. And then right as Yzerman left, the blueprint, the pieces were there to when they went on their run of winning back-to-back Stanley Cups and almost winning a third straight. Something that Yzerman would know a thing or two about from his days in Detroit. So
Yzerman was there for at least the first one, right?
For the first cup. No, I believe he left the season.
No, he did not. He did not get a ring with the Tampa Bay.
He left right before they won, but the pieces weren't there. The foundation, the blueprint was there. By Steve Yzerman.
I think the whole problem, and this guy is a Hall of Famer, and I mentioned his name to you, Ken Holland. What the hell happened? Why did this Red Wing team get like it did under Kenny Holland? That Stevie had to come in wearing a white coat and on the white horse to save this franchise.
That's called loyalty. Seriously. Too much loyalty. Loyalty
would
be the biggest.
Loyalty.
Yeah,
I'm
very
telling
much
you,
so.
Ken
Very much
Holland
so.
was a great general
Two
manager.
players with long-term contracts, such as Justin Abdelkader, Jonathan Erickson, Nicholas Cronwall, Danny DeKaiser, Franz Nielsen.
So wait,
I would say
so
Hakan.
Eiserman wasn't there
Jimmy
in
Howard.
2019 and 20 because I thought he just got here this past season.
No. Eisman signed
This is
in
Eisenman's
19.
third year here, Jeremy.
This is
Okay.
year 3 for Eisman.
I thought it was only his
But
second.
You
But
mentioned Ken Holland, George. I get that, and Holland does deserve some credit too, especially I think in terms of helping putting together that 2002 season, that 2002 team. I think Holland, as well as due to credit of Mr. I, due to the pushing of Mr. I, deserves credit for that. But also, don't forget about Hakan Anderson. It was him that was able to.
Well, yeah, they're Swedish scout. They're European scout. Yeah.
Oh,
Good
yeah, that's how we got the Russian five.
Thanks for bringing this up, Taylor, about the Red Wings and Scott.
Thank you.
Yeah, the one thing I want to add to this whole thing is this, okay? You can talk about what they've got to do during the offseason and try to get Larkin under contract, but you got to start hitting on some of these trades, okay? You do.
Yes, they have to.
I mean, trades are a major part of roster construction. Yes. And the Nedeljkovic one, and unfortunately the Verana one, they just did not work.
On paper, it looked great when it was first completed. That's why fans were so excited. But unfortunately,
because he had potential.
Well, but the end result, but you know what? At the end result is really what we talk about.
Exactly.
All right, I want to turn it over to Taylor. Okay, you have some Pistons thoughts. Why don't you continue on, Taylor?
Oh, but before I do, I'd like to add about Jacob Verana. He would, according, Kyle Busch of the Healthy Scratch podcast pointed out that Verana is one of the best 5-on-5 players in the NHL, and Jacob, the Red Wings could still use him.
I think whatever mental or psychological issues that Verana has been going through this past year, that could play a role into how this personal matters rather. It could play a role into how his season's gone for him so far. You hope he clears through that, and like you said, if he works his way up through Grand Rapids, which is why when Eisman made that deal last week, what was it he made to get someone a minor leaguer in return from San Jose, that probably left a spot open potentially for Verana to make his way back up. Same thing with Nedeljkovic too, since he cleared waivers and he's doing work in Grand Rapids too. From what I heard from the one of the previous games.
They're both in GR.
Yeah, well, here's what we're probably going to do. Okay, I see the trend of how the chemistry is going between us and you guys. So what I'd like to do is and Taylor and I will continue to work on it, is we'll bring this dynamic in maybe every 3 or 4 weeks. So that way we can keep you up to date on some of the things that we're going to do. Taylor and I can work it out, add all 3 of us, and we'll do a show committed to what you're doing, because I can see that the chemistry between your ability to research and dig is awfully good. And if I don't know that's the case, all you need to do, folks, is look in the chat room. And I know that I may have 20/70 vision, but I can tell you there's a heck of a lot of people on their keyboard mentioning a heck of a lot of things. All right, Taylor, anything else you want to go on, or do you finally want to get to the Pistons?
Pistons, man, they're just getting dominated by the Milwaukee Bucks, including Giannis Antetokounmpo, the Greek freak. The GOAT.
Okay, I thought
you
needed
the nickname.
Oh, yeah.
128-99, 9:05 left to play in the fourth quarter. The Pistons dead last in the East. Let me check the NBA standings on the NBA app right now. But the Milwaukee Bucks have proven that they are an elite two-way NBA team. And right
the Pistons
now,
the Pistons have proven there's still a long ways away to go for
36.
The Pistons, unfortunately.
You know what? They're a game and a half behind the Hornets.
Yeah, long ways away, as long as Tom Gores is the owner.
So yeah,
Milwaukee's been a disappointment to me this year.
The Houston Rockets are 10-30. The Houston Rockets are 10-36. So the Pistons apparently hold the second NBA draft lottery pick,
or at least the odds, the second best odds, I should say.
Best odds, yeah.
Yeah, best odds, yeah.
Because remember the Pistons.
To win the lottery.
When they won the lottery to select Cade in 2021, they were the third or fourth best, or fourth worst in terms of record wise. So they weren't the undisputed number one worst.
Which is weird. You know that there's been more fourth seeds to get the number 1 seed than number 1 seeds get the number 1 pick.
Didn't that Jeremy? Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't that happen the year that the Charlotte Bobcats, when they won only 7 games, had the worst winning percentage in a single season in NBA history.
And
that
the
was
Cleveland
year,
Cavaliers got the first pick.
Actually, no. Was it Cleveland? No. That was New Orleans, because that was the Anthony Davis draft.
Pelicans.
Yeah, okay. Unibrow. Okay,
yeah.
I was a little ahead of my years.
Charlotte got number 2. They missed out on getting.
Oh yeah,
Anthony
it was
Davis,
the Pistons that got beat out by Cleveland. Pistons in New York, because they were the 1 and 2 seed. The Knicks.
Yeah, but you know what, though? I want to piggyback off of you, Ed, for a moment, okay? Losing Cade Cunningham certainly made things a lot more challenging for him, without a doubt. It's unfortunate that I believe in 2 of his first 3 seasons that Cade Cunningham has had to deal with injuries. It's unfortunate.
Is it the same leg?
I'm not sure this is the same leg. I'm not sure if it's the same leg or it's opposite. I do know it was a stretch factor in his shin. I'm not sure if it was the same leg or the opposite leg from previous before. But
our buddy Dom DeRubis. Bobcats were awful that year, but George Wallace was a beast on that team. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And a young Kemba Walker too, and a young Kemba Walker in his rookie year too.
All right.
In that era.
In terms of the Pistons,
I'll take Ben Wallace any day over George Wallace.
Oh yeah, hands down. But in terms of going back to the Pistons, what this year has been for them, this team will go as far as Cade will go. And while I understand some maybe be labeling the whole China doll label or injury prone, let's not forget, okay, and Matthew Stafford went through a couple bad early years in terms of dealing with injuries himself, and you see how he turned out. So I'd say give Cade some time, let him get it fully accumulated to what his body can do, what his body can handle. Remember, he did put on more weight on his body, so his body's got to get adjusted to that. And also, when there's more pieces around him, of him not having to focus so much of being taking on so much of the workload, both on offense and defense, but especially on offense, being the facilitator that he is. And if the Pistons, unwatchable, giving up so much defense, so many points.
49 points against.
That happens when you don't have a formidable, consistent defensive presence at the rim.
And if I can interject, Scott, and add, just a slight correction. It's not George Wallace. His name was Gerald Wallace.
Gerald Wallace.
There we go.
George Wallace is somebody else from way back in history that we don't want to talk about.
Yeah, I was thinking that, but I'm glad it came out of your jaws, not mine.
I know who you're talking about now. I just thought about that.
Yeah,
exactly.
Want to hear a very shocking sports update, scoring update? 130 to 99. 130 to 99.
Embarrassment.
That's
a total embarrassment.
That's been that
and
kind of
year for the
Pistons.
Wait, Casey, pack your bags, please.
Oh my God! Yeah, I agree.
Come on, let's get out.
There must be a new coach. The Pistons are not having a new coach next year.
Absolutely.
If only Tom Gores grew a set.
That's funny.
Because while I see the development from Killian Hayes, I see the development from Jalen Ivey, I see the development from from Duren. From Jalen Duren, excuse me.
Defense, though.
He's not. He is not. You need a you need someone in there that knows their defense.
He can't coach defense.
And when you're in a city, like Detroit,
Casey's a falling dinosaur.
Like Detroit, that knows that has history built around defense.
And
when you are in a division that has the likes of the Chicago Bulls, I know they've been a disappointment, but the Bulls were a lot of people's favorite picks to do some damage in the division this year. Oh yeah, you're in the same division as Giannis Antetokounmpo, so yeah, you're gonna need all the defensive help you could possibly get to deal with players of that caliber in this division.
Look at Dom.
Yeah, I agree, Dom. Absolutely. I wish they could do it now.
Yep.
But I just don't see that.
Hey, Dom. Hey, Dom, if you're watching this right now, subscribe to our channel at the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast and follow us on Twitter at Michigan_truth and like our Facebook page.
Attaboy. All right, Taylor, get that plug in there because you're going to get about another 10 minutes. You get to do it again after you go out there and talk college basketball with the Michigan Wolverines and Michigan State Spartans, which, by the way, is our last topic of the night where everybody gets to talk about where they belong. All right, Taylor, continue with U of M basketball and Michigan State. Floor is yours.
Well, Michigan recently beat Minnesota 60-56 just yesterday. Michigan right now, men's basketball on the app, on the Michigan Athletics app, they take on the Maryland Terrapins. Oh wait, no, they play at home against the Purdue Boilermakers. That's the third ranked Purdue Boilermakers.
The number one
this Thursday
ranked Purdue
at
Boilermakers.
9. Number 1, thank you very much. Not 3, but 1 now. Used to be number 3, but number
Massive.
1 Purdue Boilermakers
That's
this Thursday at 9 on FS1. This Thursday at 9 on FS1.
That's massive because, correct me if pardon the interruption, that is a massive game because we're talking in terms of Big Ten standings. As far as I last checked, Michigan was at the very least within 2 games or so of Purdue for the Big Ten conference standings lead. 1.5 or 2 games. MSU also was in that same ballpark, and they just played Purdue close, very, very tough in a game that went to the last second. So, opportunistic game coming up for Michigan in terms of Big Ten championship standings standpoint, and also potential bubble watch standpoint as well, because they were a bubble team last year. They got in, they had a couple of good outings, but they didn't make a far enough run. For this year, they've been, I think, slightly worse, unfortunately, than what they were last year, even though Hunter Dickinson has been outstanding. He's been playing like an NBA lotto pick this year for sure, but he needs more help around him. He can't be the only guy doing it. So for Michigan,
I agree with you guys. Michigan is on the bubble right now.
Yeah,
and
I love Juwan Howard, but they got to show better than this.
They need to step it up to be able to even contend to make it to the NCAA.
This will be a big stepping point.
The only thing I'll say is Dom DeRubis is on fire in the chat room. So who wants to read his latest 2 comments?
I got it.
Yeah,
the Pistons and the Spurs are the last 20 years or so are the only 2 teams that consistently play defense, and now they're the 2 worst defensive teams in the league. The association is broken.
That's sad.
All right, well, here we're not done yet with him, so let's move on here.
The NBA is broken. That's what he's saying.
Yep.
Yeah, the association.
Michigan.
I have opinions about the NBA, but you know what, Taylor? Why don't you get used to reading the chat every now and then? You can go ahead and read this one. Can you see it?
I've read chats before on StreamYard. We run our own StreamYard channel.
Good stuff.
Yeah, I got a system.
Well, I have a system.
Yeah, I've done StreamYard before.
Michigan is trying to salvage their season. Several bad losses this year. Get it together, Jawan.
Well, this would be one way to salvage their season when you knocking off the number 1 team in the nation in your backyard. Not to mention you got a big rematch coming up on February 18th against the Spartans in your house too. Those are 2 big games I would circle for Michigan in terms of Big Ten standings, but also bubble watch, because the people in the committee, the selection committee, they pay attention to certain games like that for teams that are trying to get in on the bubble. Trust me. Sometimes it takes winning at least one of those 2 games to just get in on the last day.
No question about it. And Taylor, right. I know you haven't talked about the Spartans yet, but boy, Izzo, they're struggling right now too. Big time. They lost to Indiana.
Yes, they did. 82-69 was the score, if I'm exactly correct.
Michigan State was favored to win that game, by the way.
Yeah.
By 5 points.
We saw it did against.
The betting odds,
This is not Bob Knight's Indiana this year, guys.
No. It's not even Tom Crean Indiana. It's not even Tom Crean's Indiana.
Okay, right.
No.
First of all, I do want to acknowledge.
Somehow State fell apart.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Taylor.
Yeah, somehow State fell apart, and they fell behind by as many as, 11 or 12. They lost by 13.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, the thing that saves them though is they play a very tough non-conference schedule, as you guys all know.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about a border team or a bubble team, State's always going to get the nod above Michigan because they play a tougher non-conference.
Of course,
because their RPI is better. The RPI index.
Right.
Yeah, they've been conditioned at this point. Izzo has made them conditioned at this point year after year. Listen, this is the schedule we've got. This is how I'm going to prepare you. This is how we expect you to play. We deal and roll with the results as we go. So I can at least appreciate and respect the fact that, listen, no, you're not going to win all those non-conference games, but that's the point. That's the test. Where are you at this point of the season? Can you hang with this caliber team? And we'll see if you can make that progress report between now and tournament time.
Jeremy?
Big Ten teams in the tourney are like SEC football teams that are ranked early in the season, overrated and fraudulent.
I gotta somewhat agree with that, unfortunately, because when's the last time we had a Big Ten national champion? Granted, I know Michigan's gotten razor close the past couple of years, especially in the last couple of years with John Beilein, but they didn't break that glass ceiling. The last team to win the national title from the Big Ten Conference, I believe, is still the Michigan State Spartans from 2000.
Yeah,
which is, by the way, Izzo's only national championship. I know Izzo's a legend and everything, and he deserves his flowers, but people deify him too much.
With the Flintstones.
Yes, they deify Izzo too much. Same way they did with Bo in Michigan football. Listen, I'm a Michigan
and
fan,
Lloyd Carr,
but I can be a reasonable Michigan fan. Well, hey, at least Lloyd won a national title. You know what I'm saying? So people will say, "Oh, it was a half title. It was in
'97."
I don't care. He went undefeated. He won all his games. He beat Ohio State, and he was the number 1 ranked team at the end of the season. To me, and you won the Rose Bowl, okay? Which is, by the way, Bo had his fair share of Rose Bowl losses, especially when he had a chance to win.
Is that the year we played Texas?
No. The 97 Rose Bowl or 98 Rose Bowl, Charles Woodson's Heisman year. That was against Ryan Lee for Washington State. You're thinking of the 2005 Rose Bowl with Texas against Vince Young, which by the way, that was the prologue to what Vince Young was going to do to USC the next year.
Right.
Yeah, well, I mean, Dom also mentions the 89 Wolverines. He says, resting on his laurels.
Emil Robinson with the free throw, which, by the way, that was how Scott Fisher got the job. Coach Fisher got the job full time because he was brought in to coach the team as an emergency because the original coach had been fired or been replaced, or whatever. And that's when Bo had made that famous, or rather infamous decree that a Michigan man shall run this team.
You're talking about Bill Frater. Bill Frater was let go.
Right.
Yep.
I want to point out a special thank you for everybody that's participated in the chat room tonight. We have a lot of good participation in our chat room. And I'm going to tell you tonight,
I like it.
It has been unbelievable. And of course, just, following up Fire Up Michigan, we have an episode of Fire Up Wisconsin later on tonight. This is the first doubleheader tonight. So with all the activity, this has been a lot of fun for me, just watching you guys talk about it. All I get to do is direct traffic and watch everybody chime in. So great for
that's easy work for you, my man.
What's that?
The Bucks have scored 140.
Okay. Well, I know the Bucks are ruling tonight.
Defense, so,
the Bucks have scored 146 points.
Speaking of Beilein, isn't he the assistant coach for Detroit right now?
He's one of the directors of college
scouting. He's not an assistant coach, but he's
director of player personnel.
But he's somebody on the roster that they have in the coaching room that if they fired Casey today, I wouldn't mind him getting moved up as interim coach and possibly teaching some defense.
And not to mention, one of his guys that he did coach or that he is aware of is on that team. I believe Isaiah Livers was a Beilein recruit.
Yes, he was.
Yes, he was.
He was. I know he played under Juwan Howard, but originally he was a Beilein recruit.
Yeah, Beilein though had very bad marks in Cleveland, but so did a guy named Chuck Daly had bad marks in Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe Coach Beilein got railroaded in Cleveland.
I do too. And Dan Gilbert, I'm sorry, that's on you.
Don't get me started on Dan Gilbert. Do not. As a guy that is,
I heard he was that bad.
I'm unabashedly Team LeBron. Okay, don't get me wrong. LeBron
has
his faults. LeBron has his faults, but like when it comes to Dan Gilbert, I'm always going to side with LeBron on that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I just have to.
I just said I'm sorry because I'm not a LeBron lover.
No, I'm not.
We got lots to talk about on that one, then, Jeremy.
I'm not sorry to say that Fire Up Michigan can be heard on iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcast. So, folks, please hit the red subscribe button on YouTube, South Florida Tribune, and we're striving for 1,000 subscribers. When I got crews like this, we should get to 1,000 right away. The way these guys go out there and talk.
Dom DeRuba says, I'd take any one of you 5 or myself as the next Pistons head coach.
Thank you, Dom.
I appreciate the flattery.
I'll put my resume in tomorrow, Dom.
Yeah.
Not me.
As long as you're signing
it. Against Iowa, Thursday at 7 on FS1.
Yeah, no, I want to, like I said, our goal is 1,000 subscribers. And as I mentioned earlier in the broadcast, like I say, we're glad to have the Michigan Sports Truth on with us tonight. as well as all the other shows on our network as well. Great job by Jeremy, Taylor, okay, Ed, and of course George. So with that said, okay, Jeremy, why don't you let everybody know how they get hold of you? And we know we're gonna let you do your thing afterwards, so we go fire up Wisconsin after. Go out smoking.
Well, that being said, you can find my writings under the SouthFloridaTribune.com under the Motor City Tribune heading with the list of authors. You also can find me on my YouTube channel, which is Kneecap Biting with Smoking Jeremy B. I do 2 shows a week in the off season. I have my Wednesday where it's the NFL Roundtable Talks, where I cover the NFL news, the weekend's playoff action, and do the pick'ems for the next slate of playoff games. Then on Friday, I have the Lions fan cave chat, where I invite fans of the Lions to talk about the Lions news that's came out this week. I knew Ben Staley was going nowhere. I said it last week and it was backed up. So
Ben Johnson.
Oh, Ben Johnson, yeah, Coach Johnson. You probably think of Coach Deuce Staley, but yeah, I agree.
Yeah, Ben Johnson. I knew he wasn't going anywhere because he doesn't have the experience. This was his first year as an OC. I knew he probably knew his best bet would be to stay here at least another year, especially when the only 3 teams that were interviewing him were dumpster fires.
Exactly. Carolina, Arizona, what was the other one? Was it Indy?
Houston. See,
no, I'd rather take what I
know,
what I can.
Indy and Denver are talking to Aaron Glenn, and hire him, please.
All right, well, with that, hey, Smoker, you got the last word on that. All right, Ed, why don't you let everybody know how they can get a hold of you?
You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at EdSmith313. Twitter is my primary source of communication, where you get all of my takes, reactions, and all sense of tomfoolery, all in between. So that is the best bet on where to find me on Twitter and Instagram.
And we're looking forward to bringing you back again, Ed. You were fantastic tonight. With that said, we'll turn it over to Taylor.
All right. My Twitter and Instagram are at DT2Phillips with 2 L's. Of course, I made the Michigan Sports Truth podcast from the ground up. On Twitter and Instagram at Michigan_Truth. Facebook, the Michigan Sports Truth podcast, and on YouTube at the Michigan Sports Truth podcast. Get a whole hundreds, maybe thousands of people to subscribe to our channel. Then maybe we'll be monetized.
Well, I'm sure you will. I'll tell you what, Taylor, you'll get opportunities to return here. You and Ed did a fantastic job. Anytime I bring a new guest on here, I always look forward to it. And you guys certainly did nothing to.
What was the name of that podcast again?
Well, the Michigan Sports Truth podcast.
All right. So all I can say is Taylor and Ed, you guys came as advertised. You did a great job. All right. And last but not least, my co-host. George Dycorn, let everybody know, and then I'll close it out.
Here's my book, Detroit Sports Broadcasters on the Air. Learn about Ty Tyson.
He's a player.
He's almost as old as Ty Cobb. Ty Tyson.
Ernie Harwell. He was my idol.
Dan Patrick, Bud Lynch, Bruce Martin, and Scott Morganroth. Yes, Scott.
George Hill.
43 years. Scott and I go back. And Scott interviewed the great Muhammad Ali and the great Jimmy Connors. The book's available. There's a link on the South Florida Tribune website. I write for the Motor City Tribune along with Smoke and Jeremy. I write for the Detroit Monitor newspaper. You can see me every Monday night on Fire Up Michigan and other shows such as the Sports Exchange. And also I'm available on Yahoo at gicorn.com or Twitter at SNG Sports 99. Thank you, Scott.
George.
All right, let me go ahead a few things here as well. Our website, www.southfloridatribune.com. You'll be able to find all the shows I mentioned under the WSFT drop-down. With that said, you can reach us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. My Twitter information, if you're watching it, is at Tribune South Florida Tribune. So, Ed, if you get a chance to look us up on Twitter, follow me, and I'll follow you back. And make sure, and I have all of your information. Both you and Taylor will be invited back either together or separately, depending on how it all plays out. And we'll continue to help you go out there and build the Michigan Sports Group, because I got one can only say we talked a lot about it. Maybe the next Pistons game will be slightly competitive. Either way, I can tell you this
Here's
show.
hoping.
Either
if not,
way,
we continue our watch for Wembanyama.
There you go. Well, like I said, a great first.
Whether it's competitive or not, we're just going for that lottery pick. That's it.
There you
go. That's
go.
the thing that matters for right now. Until we fire Dwayne Casey.
Yeah, the sports, the Michigan sports truth is that we had a pretty good show tonight, and of course we'll take that down to South Florida Tribune. So on behalf of Smoking Jeremy B, Taylor Phillips, Ed Smith, and George Eichhorn, my name is Scott Morganroth, appropriately named the Motor City Madmouth. Thank you for joining us on this edition of Fire Up Michigan. And I want to once again, on a final note, thank everybody in the chat room for their valid contributions. You guys in the chat room, I believe, were every bit as good as what we attempted to do here on the air. Then again, this is a collective team effort where I do the best I can to surround us with the best crew. And when I have people in the chat room that are, as Jimmy Walker would say with good times, dynamite. Oh, that's bad. Sorry, guys. Between that and Sanford Sun, there's a couple old schools there. And I knew I'd get to there, Ed. I knew there. I got this guy. So.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, there you
well,
go.
my grandmother watched that all the time, so yeah, I couldn't help but understand the reference. My goodness!
So, following up on Fire Up Michigan, we have Fire Up Wisconsin. Jeremy, George, and I are going to be joined by Candy Ebling, Brett Gardepy, and Eric Katz. So, once again, thank you very much for joining us. Have a great Monday, and we will catch you the next time. Good night, everybody, and thank you for joining us. Good night now.
Enjoy your
And remember, the truth is out there. The truth is out there.
Spade new to your pets.
Stay safe.
Barker.